Now.
Hey everybody, welcome to Board to Dev. I'm Chris,
And I'm Jason.
and we're here to bring you another jam-packed episode of pretty much anything we want to talk about, but more importantly, um, taking you through the ins and outs behind the scenes of board game, tabletop, and anything creative development. Some of our wild ideas, creative concepts, and how we bring them to life in discussions. But this episode and what we have planned is super exciting, and I can't wait to tell
Crazy
everybody
exciting.
about it.
Yeah.
Can't wait to tell everybody about it. We kind of teased it last week, didn't we?
Yeah, we got to tease it and we redefined it and we wanted to make sure that we brought something that is the true heart and epitome of what Chris and I are trying to do with this whole podcast. And that is really give you an inside look at development and thought processes and things that you go through. And so with that, we have decided to do a 6 episode, hopefully six, could be more, but minimum 6 episode on development of probably our biggest child, our biggest like proud moment of Mythic Mayhem. And for those of you that don't know what Mythic Mayhem is, it is our version of what we think would be a very fun collectible card game. Hopefully, Chris has some of the real life props he can show on camera. But we are gonna get into it, and what's gonna be great about this is that Chris and I actually haven't touched this because it's so in depth. We haven't actually touched this since like a year, like almost 2 years ago. This was before the pandemic, so we were actually meeting up like once a week and figuring that out.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've picked this one up. It's like the Lord of the Rings of tabletop ideas, just tons and tons of hours of development, and we thought it would be great to chronicle like the where we're at today, kind of give you an idea, an update of where we've taken this initial concept, and over the next 6 episodes. And we'll sprinkle in some different topics and things over the duration of the next several episodes. So it won't be back to back to back to back, but we're going to start with giving you the first 2 parts of chronicling this adventure and working through, honestly, some of the things, again, that we've done, but also like moving forward, how we're going to bring this to life. It's challenging to just set a foundation for what you think is going to be a successful tabletop game in general, but for it to be a deck builder and a collectible card game is a whole nother level. And that's why there's only been a few that have been actually successful in the past 25, 30 years. Some have come recently, mostly in the digital realm with large gaming video game companies competing like in the Wizard realm, and they've done pretty well. But in terms of like physical cards, like Jason, like outside of like the Magic, which is the end all be all, there's a few out there, but like, can you name more than like 5 like epic, like long term successful, everybody knows about? You can count them on one hand.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's been it's so interesting. Like there has been a bunch of different episodes, like a bunch of different like evolutions, I guess, of like trading card games, and Hasbro definitely has kind of a leg up, acquiring Wizards of the Coast with Magic, and they did one that's like mildly successful, but also kind of boring. I don't know. I liked it because it was Transformers, but they have like the Transformers trading card game, which is cool. But then Magic is like the bread and butter on that end, and then you move over to Nintendo. They have Pokemon, which is, you know, another one. You have Yu-Gi-Oh, but realistically, like the games that tend to do the best have a lore that the game is written around, and that's where they kind of keep it. And there's some really good like the game developer conference. There's some really good videos out there that are from like 10 years ago almost, like, and 5, maybe even some more recent ones of talking about how they develop Magic and like what that looks like, and the amount of brain power that is behind that fucking team. And you know, the whole reason why I got into developing card games and building it was because of Magic, and I would love to be involved in that for a career. But the reality is that that level of business and that level of gameplay, they want like astronomically stupid requirements for you to get involved into the company. And so I just felt that the best way for us to like get involved in that is just do our own shit and do it right. And that's why this has taken so long. And like, we're not saying that Mythic Mayhem is going to be fucking like bigger than Magic, but I think you guys will really love what we get into, and I think that you'll really have a passion behind it. And there's multiple ways we want to interact with everyone, and we're not sure what this is going to spawn, but you know, keep in mind that this is like a massive passion project for us, and that you're going to learn a lot. You're going to learn like the tools that we use, how we work together with drawing, like how we work together with mapping out the rules of the game and the terminologies. Like, just to give you an idea of what we're getting into, Mythic Mayhem has 4 card types in terms of like creatures and mythic things that you fight. We have our own terms we've created with definitions. We have the style of play for each category of card. We have the level tiered cards that we are from common to uncommon, rare, mythic, epic, whatever. And on top of that, we also have like the value, point values. So this is something that's not like, we're not looking to finish this in the 6 episodes that we're going to be going through with you guys. We're looking to get this in a really good starting phase to show you how much bullshit and thought process and everything goes into creating this. In a passion perspective, you know, you think about the games that you go and you back on Kickstarter, and it's like, oh, that's fucking rad, I backed it. And then what happens typically is you get that game on Kickstarter and you get it, and then it's just not fun, right? Or it didn't make sense, or you didn't follow it. So the idea here is, whoever's watching this, we hope a lot of people watching this or listening to it, but we want you to be involved just as much as we're involved. And so as we move forward in this, if you guys have suggestions or anything like that, if you're watching this on YouTube, comment on YouTube. We'll get back to you on that. If you're listening to this on like Apple, Spotify, whatever, comment on that as well. We'll go through and we'll read that. So yeah, I think you know, it's a lot to be set up front, but stay tuned. And you know, over these next 6 episodes and however long they are, we hope that you get something out of it. And if there's technical problems, well, that's on Steve, and we got to have Chip Maddox fire that guy. So that is it.
Yep. Well, let's kick it off with like what like where we're at today, and as you kind of alluded to, like where what's the initial concept, and perhaps we can kind of share the card types and kind of the theory of the game, if you will, and the flow and the mechanics, if you will, as well, and kind of go from there.
Okay. So let's get into defining. Did you happen to bring do you happen to have the battle gems on you?
I think I might save that for episode 2.
Okay.
You know.
Yeah.
But yes, battle gems.
Battle gems, yeah. So the idea behind this was, you know, if you think, and I'm just going to relate this to Magic, and you know, it is what it is. But we were thinking about like what, you know, this whole thing spawned from unicorns and zombies, right? And so the idea behind unicorns and zombies is what mythical creature would end up winning in a battle, and so that's where unicorns and zombies landed. But unicorns and zombies is meant to be easily playable, family friendly, whatever. You could jump in and play it. And then so we were thinking to ourselves, like, how do we create something that has longer life can push the boundaries, we can continue to move forward. And so that's where we came up with the idea behind Mythic Mayhem. Mythic Mayhem is you have a set of cards. You have 4 different types of cards. You have dinos, gnomes, zombies, and do you remember, Chris?
Dinos, gnomes, zombies,
And
unicorns. Didn't we
unicorns.
do?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
We
what
did
the?
unicorns.
I thought it was like
Yeah. So what we decided to do was, because we kind of already have an idea of what that is, we're actually going to go through and hash out over this course kind of what we've done with the Gnome and the Dyno decks. And so in working through this and kind of thinking through our favorite games to play, whether tabletop, card, paper, or digital, we always remember, like, there's always been terms. So there's always like advance or whatever, right? So in terms of like where we're at, let me go over to this. So on here for our terminology, we have advance, which is let me see. Can you read this, or should I make it a little bit bigger?
Let's make it a little bit bigger.
All right.
But I mean, I think what was interesting about like where we kind of started like the brainstorming was, like there was going to be some similarities in deck building games, like in general, like everything. I think if you look at the stuff that's out there today, it's very similar to what Magic is, right? Like there's a style that is synonymous with like when you're playing, whether it be fun or competitive, that there's going to be elements of it. So we knew going into it that there was going to be some parts of it that would remind us of the games that we like to play, right?
Yep.
There's no question. In fact, I think, as I recall, Jason, you and I, like, we like played like a couple of rounds of like Magic, and we looked at some of the cards, and I bought like a new Commander deck and stuff, and we just like, you brought over like your $40,000 Magic collection that you have, you know, all that shit. But we looked at all that stuff, and we got like started getting inspired. And then, as you said, like unicorns and zombies existed, and we looked at that card game and stuff, and we're like, okay, this is kind of cool. Like, what could we do that's different, that mimics a bit to a traditional deck building game, but incorporates different like mechanics and play styles and action cards and stuff like that. And that was going to be important to us. But in addition to that, we thought like, well, the play has to be different, and like much different in a way. Like, what dynamic can we add that's a huge differentiator?
Yeah.
But the art style and the aesthetic has to match what we like, which typically in like these epic games, it's like wizardry and like knights and like, you know, those, it's not like kind of like cartoonish and not like kind of weird and quirky like what we like at Cardboard Monster Studios. And so like that was important to us, is like it has to kind of be like a unicorn and zombie type art style. Like, in, you know, you mentioned like BJ, like, who's done amazing work in creating the art there, and then your style as well, and like the aesthetics that we like, it has to be in this game. So like, how do you make this kind of epic game where it's like combat and competitiveness, but still like be fun and kind of cool? And you look at the cards, you're like, that's freaking funny.
Yeah.
That would be important to us. In fact, before we decided on Mythic Mayhem, it was called Civil War. Like that was like the prototype name, right? It was like Unicorns and Zombies Civil War, and then it evolved into like Mythic Mayhem. But I think it's important to know, like, when we did the brainstorming, that was the first thing that we decided is like, it's not there's gonna be some things that mirror what's out there today, but how do we make it different in terms of gameplay? How do we ensure that the aesthetic is cool and that we like it, but also could be collectible, could be competitive, could be fun? All of those things were important to us. And so I think that's important to kind of note as we kind of jump into things, is that was like critical for us. And how we came with the 4 characters. We had unicorns and zombies. We had dinos because we had talked about like expansion. How the hell did gnomes come? Do you remember how gnomes came into play?
Yeah. So we were talking about it needing to live in this like mythical world. of like of unicorns and zombies. And so the dinos came into play because there is an expansion pack coming for unicorns and zombies that is dinos, that they're basically a board disruptor. And so the thought process had already been involved with dinos, but then we were like, okay, but this, if we're going to do a collectible card game, there's a potential for 4 people to play at a time, or deck building, and deck building with three types just isn't really there. We don't have the brain power right now to do 6 types or 5, so we're just like, let's get it down to 4. And so where the actual gnomes came from was, one, I think gnomes are funny, and 2, goblin decks already exist in Magic, so I want gnome decks. So realistically, the gnomes are basically just kind of like my homage to fucking Magic, in terms of like, I just want gnomes, and which spiraled me down like learning about the mythology of gnomes even more, and learning that there are multiple types of gnomes, which then opened the game up to even more, because there's wood gnomes, house gnomes, leaf gnomes, tree gnomes. Like it's like I didn't even have any clue that there were this many gnomes. So that's where we decided, like, cool, that's where it is. And we actually talked a little bit about a 5th version of a card, which we'll get into later on, not even in the 6-part series, because we need to do it with 4. But so that's kind of where we were at. And so we're, again, disclaimer, we're not claiming to have invented the wheel. We are saying that we are building a game that seems fun to us, that takes the fun parts of these mobile games like Hearthstone and other games, as well as like tabletop paper games. So, Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon, Magic, and combines them all and makes it super easy to play, in theory, comparison.
Yeah.
And so,
Do you have the art, the initial gnome you drew? Do you have that? I think it'd be kind of cool if I know it's probably in the bin of all the freaking art, but I think it'd be cool to show, like, the first ever, when we said gnome, then you went and like drew the first gnome.
Yeah, 1 second.
All right.
Let me pull that up. It's actually drawing it because it was like pretty ridiculous. So you want to see the
first gnome that was on paper, to kind of get us inspired of like what this could potentially look like in terms of these characters.
So that's the logo for the cards. For those of you that are audio listening, I'm showing images. I think.
Yeah. So as you're like scrolling for that, like, it was important for us. Like, we already had the unicorns and zombies from the game. Jason already had a couple of Dyno mock-ups for the expansion, and so we just needed to see, like, okay, what would a gnome look like on a card, just to kind of get inspired as we're creating these different types of gnomes within the game. And during the holidays, I think there's fucking gnomes everywhere. So it was easy to get like a point of reference of what these gnomes could potentially look like. But at least we solidified those were the 4 groups, the decks that you could play. And then from there, we needed to decide, okay, from there, like, how would each deck play? But before we got to that is, what's the makeup of the game? How do you actually play the game? And so I think,
I actually don't know if I have it in this one.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, we could show it at the next episode, but as we talk about
I'm like giving away all these like secrets of shit that we have in here.
Yeah,
like
man.
Our Atari.
So maybe we talk about like the 4, like what's the mechanics of the game. So now that we've landed the plane, got it. There you go.
There you go.
So that was kind of the first gnome. We're like, cool, that matches the aesthetic. That's cool.
Yeah.
And we can start developing characters within it. But I think it's important to share like the mechanics of the game. Now we've got the 4 groups, play styles. We can get into like how each deck plays. But how is it different? what is the deck building like? Like we want to walk you through a little bit of what our thoughts were initially.
Yeah, so the first part is you always have to kind of work on kind of evening it out, right? So if one hand is good at something, another hand has to have a counterpoint. And it doesn't have to be the exact opposite, but you have to have things that are good. So to kind of get into just a little bit about what I'm explaining, I'll go over like the deck concepts. The Dyno Decks are built and meant to be a deck that is basically like a wall deck. So they do attack and they do have strong attacks, but majority of your dinos are going to have massive defense. So like you can play a slow game with a Dyno deck because the dinos can take a lot of hits. In order for a dino to attack with a very strong attack, takes X amount of battle gems. So the battle gems are what kind of define how you build your deck, and we'll get into that later. But it's just important to know now. So in dinos, we were thinking about cool. What's the complete opposite? Well, knowing when you think about like unicorns and zombies, and if you've played unicorns and zombies, the unicorns are kind of like sarcastic, and the zombies are very much like dry humor. So it's like BBC comedy, right? So the unicorn deck is all about hand disruption. So if you are playing against somebody that has a unicorn deck, you know there's a good chance your hand is going to get disrupted. So that's really going to change your style of play for your deck. So you have to really be able to like have those side cards in case you come across somebody with a unicorn deck, so that you have the ability to get past the hand disruption, or else you're screwed. In a zombie deck, that deck is more about hand regeneration. So like I might attack you for whatever, but what happens is like I'm actually throwing attacks at you, but every time these zombies go and die, they end up coming back as something different, and they come back as like something stronger. Which in theory now that changes you, where if you were playing the unicorn deck with hand disruption, you're probably disrupting my hand and throwing a bunch of my cards into the graveyard. And what happens is those cards from a zombie perspective, when I bring them out to my hand, you actually can't disrupt them because they have things that block that and so that's kind of the idea behind that dichotomy of cards. And when we got into like dinos and gnomes, the dinos are very strong, so they can take a lot of hits, right? But the gnomes are all about building board state really fast. So like a gnome can come out a lot sooner depending on how many battle gems you have, whether they're attack or defense. And so you can actually like bring them out super quick and get a big board state. But the problem is that you might have like 10, 15 gnomes on deck, and someone else has like 3 dinos, and they can take the entire hit and your entire deck is gone. So you're really playing with the idea of this, like you can build quick board state. So like a good mashup deck would be gnomes and unicorns, because you can hand disrupt and board state, right? Or you can do dinos and zombies, where you can have like massive blockers, so you can kill your own things to bring them back to have massive attack and block. So you can do this whole thing, right? So in doing that, we realized that there was a need for us to have certain things on cards that would explain what the card does. So if you think about like Hearthstone or anything like that, a card comes out and it has something on there. For us, it's advance, right? Well, advance allows a card to attack when it's cast from your hand. So basically, think of Summoning Sickness and Magic. This is what advance does in Mythic Mayhem. So I don't know if that kind of explains it a little bit. Like,
yeah. That was important for us to like determine, because like that it's cool because you can change up how you want to play, but it also enables you like moving forward as we develop more cards. Like if you're someone that likes to play a very aggressive style that's more attack driven, you know that you're probably going to go, with a certain character's hands versus someone that likes to play more defensive and slow. The pace of the game, the style, I think was important to us. What was equally important to us is how you're able to play cards within your hand, what enables you. So in like Magic, we know like lands like are basically the fuel for you to be able to play cards out of your hand. Now we didn't want to do that, but what could be a little bit different that still mimics it in some way, but creates a kind of different style of play, and also creates a physical component to it. Because what was important to us is like, sure, this could be digital, but like we want this physical, man. We want to feel it. We want to touch it. That was really important to us, and that's, as Jason mentioned, like the power gems. So, what the hell are power gems, and how do they pertain to the game? Because we
Yes,
floated this idea out. So, what are power gems? Sounds like an '80s cartoon.
it is.
Um,
Will
I
be.
love Power Gems. Power Gems are fucking great. It
I
came
will
right
be
after
start.
Ninja Turtles.
I will start. I will start to draw power gems ASAP. It's little rocks of fun, but you never know where. So the power gems are how you build your deck. So every round, if you think of like Hearthstone and the mechanics of Hearthstone, you start out, you have 3, you can cast whatever. Then at next round, you get an additional uh, mana cost casting whatever. Then you can now cast a card for 2 or 4 or whatever, right? And so for us, power gems and building the deck, you have an attack gem and a defense gem. So every round, you basically can get a new version of a gem. So in order to play something that has like massive defense, you have to have like X amount of like defense gems and power gems. So you might need to have like 4 defense gems and 3 power gems, or two defense gems and 4 attack gems. And what those do is like, so not only are you having to pay attention to the cards that I'm putting out on the table, you also have to pay attention to the amount of gems I have out on the table, because ultimately I can get to the point where I have 10 of each. But then you have no idea how I'm going to attack, because in order to attack, you also have to pay the cost of the gem. So you can't just empty your hand out and then attack willy nilly. You have to like put these cards out and then use these other cards. And we may be correcting ourselves doing this. This is all from like memory, because it's been a while since we've done it. But so that's the concept of the power gems, is to be able to use them as a source of mana to cast cards from your hand, and also a requirement to do an attack or defense in some cases.
Yep, and that is where you have to be strategic on each round what gem you choose, because that's an option you have as a player. Like after each round, you choose, and I think this is right from my memory, is you can either select a power gem or a defense gem, right?
Yeah.
So you can accumulate a shit ton of defense gems. And why would you do that? Well, that's because you're playing Dyno Deck, right? And Dyno Deck has more defense elements and defense cards. And so to be able to play that, you're going to need to collect more of those. Although there are cards and attack cards that will also need power. So you're going to have to like really understand the cards within your deck, within your hand, and what of each gem you'll need to play in order for you to play that on the board. That's where it comes in, because you could theoretically like start to collect like a certain like power gems, but then you draw cards within your deck that are defense, and you can't play it because you don't have enough fucking defense gems. So realistically, you're being strategic on how you're playing it, but also on your gem, like what you're selecting in terms of gems at the end of each round.
Yeah, and the cards have either a green, purple, or blue icon on them, and that number, there's a power gem number. So like there's a card in the Gnome Deck called Gnomes, and those ones require two green power gems. But then there's another card that's called House of Gnome, right, or House Gnome. And that requires 4 power gems, and it's blue. And the blue can be blue, green, or purple. So you can use whatever color power gem you want. So realistically, like flock of gnomes is 5 purple gems. So in order to use that card, you have to have 5 purple gems. Well, what if you were not paying attention to that card in your hand and you were grabbing like more green at that time? So that's where you have to like understand the deck that you built, so that you know what gems you're taking from the table, so that you can like build that out. And while I'm doing that, I might be gathering a bunch of purple, and Chris is like, oh, he's got like a massive defense gem or whatever, like defense deck. But realistically, I'm just grabbing a bunch of purple because my deck relies more on purple, but then I also need green, but a lot of my cards are blue. So you really have this like deception piece that's happening, because you really won't be able to tell what type of deck someone's playing until you're like 4 rounds in, because you're mining for like either a green or a purple, when reality maybe your big setup card is blue and just requires like 5 of any color or 5 purple. So that's a whole nother concept when you think about when you're playing Magic and you're playing land. You know, okay, they're playing a green black deck. It is what it is. But then you get these other lands that come in and can like give you anything else. And if you've ever played a green deck, you know you can ramp with elves that then can you tap for mana. And so the concept was, how do we take that and turn that into a physical anxiety causing aspect of a game? Because I don't have anxiety when I see someone with a green deck. I'm like, this guy's gonna just fucking ramp and use elves to get ahead of me on card draw. Well, you can't do that, and then you everyone gets the same amount of gems every time. You just have to decide which gem you're gonna grab the next round. So that's where the power gems came in, which is just another level of like frustration when you're fighting somebody, because it's like, well, I know I can beat this, but I also don't know what they're going for because they have like 2 green and like 5 purple. So like, where am I at?
Yep. So, but you popped it on the screen earlier. So let's go through like a group of cards, and just as an example, show you the name of the card and then how many gems of each type you would need, and then the attack and defense of each card. I think we have that listed out.
Yeah, we have everything listed out. We'll go over the flavor text of the card, which will then link us back to what our terms are. So we're actually going to go. I'm actually for this episode. We'll probably go through the Gnome Deck, talk a little bit about it, and we'll wrap up. In the next episode, we'll go ahead and we'll get into the Dyno Deck, talk a little bit more around that, and then wrap that up. Maybe we'll get into a little bit more in the next episode. But let's actually go over the Gnome Deck if you're cool with that. So we will jump on over. All right, so here we are on the Gnome Deck, and as you can see, let me make it a little bit smaller. It looks a lot smaller on our screen than it actually probably is. Okay, so when you look at these decks, this is what we came up with for the cards, and the other side over here is really just the quantity of the cards. So how many cards are going to be there. So one thing that before we get into this that I will tell you is, when you're getting into the idea of developing a game, define your tools before you get into like the development of the game, because your tools are what's really going to help you. And then at the time when we were doing this, Google Sheets seemed to be the best way to do it. As of current state, we design a lot of our stuff in Dropbox paper. We use Dropbox to house everything. So we're quickly migrating over to that platform. If you've ever used Dropbox, it is literally just one of the best tools I've ever used. And Dropbox paper is probably one of the best collaborative tools I think we've ever used. Just as a side note. So getting into this, you can see here we're at number 1. Obviously, got to have names. I think we spent more time thinking about the names than we did the actual cards. But the first one we have is Nomis. So Nomis require 2 power gems, and it's the color green. It's an attack 1 and a defense 1. So this is very much like a just like a throw out piece, right? This is like a throw out card, just something to kind of get board state. But when the card enters the battlefield, you add a 1/1 gnome grunt to the battlefield. So someone wants to know what grunt is. A grunt is a term for a non-playable card. So if I had to relate that back to Magic terms, that would be like a token card. Our next card that we have is Gnome on the Range. That requires 1 purple power gem, and that is a 1/1 gnome that you can tap to add 1 power gem of any type. This card has advanced. Chris, pop quiz. Do you remember what advanced means?
What did we say was advance? Um, I thought that this was that you could. Um, I thought you. I don't remember actually. I forgot what we said advance was. I want to say
Yeah.
it had to do with the turn.
Yeah. So advance is you don't have summoning sickness. That means that this card seems like it's a chump because it comes in, it's a 1/1, one purple. You could do this on first play. But what it has is advance, which in our terms, advance allows the card to attack when it's cast from the hand.
Yep.
So I can put this out and I can say, okay, cool. But now let's say I have a gnome run, right? So now I can throw out gnome on the range for one purple. It's a 1/1, which means it attacks for one, blocks for one. But I can instantly tap it. I can churn it, and it adds one power gem of any type. And so then I can tap that immediately for one green and throw out gnome run, which is a 1/1 green. And the card has charge, and it may attack when casts. And so charge, if I remember correctly, charge is not on here. We did not write that in. But what charge actually does is charge is it has to attack every time you attack. So I basically just came out and I threw a card out that then let me get board advantage and then also attacked you. And now you have nothing on the board. So you just took one hit. I have one card tapped, one card out that's tapped technically because it's attacked. Now it's back over to Chris. So those cards are tapped. I actually can't block him, but once they untap, I'm still ahead on board advantage unless Chris has something else that he can play. So that's gnome run. On Battle Gnome, we have 4 power gems, so you need 4 green power gems to play this card. And that's a 2/2. If the card is dealt damage, you gain +1/+0. So
That is a card you definitely want in your hands.
yes, and remember the attack rules are the same. So if I technically have Battle Gnome out, I can then cast out Gnome Run and attack my own card and give it +1/+0, and then attack you. So now I'm hitting you for 3. So you can start to play with your own hand to build it up. Horston the Helpful. You want to go over that one?
Yeah, when a card enters the battlefield, other gnomes get +1. So 1/1 defense and attack. So that again is a pretty badass card as well.
Yeah, but that requires you to have 3 purple. So as you can see, even in the first like few cards, you're already having to think ahead of time of like what gems do I have to pull each round. And so one thing that's important to understand is that each round you can build up your gems, but you actually only get to the point where you have 2 gems or 10 gems. And that can be a combination of either thing. So 5 and 5, however you want to split the numbers up. Everyone knows math. Figure it out on your own. But that's where it comes into play to being able to figure that out. You want to go with this? I think you named this card.
Yeah, I don't know what the hell I was thinking. We must have been drinking. I'll imagine the shadows. So comes into the battlefield with cloak. This card cannot be attacked unless it attacks first. That's a 4 power gem number, color blue, with an attack of 3/2. So what does cloak mean?
Well, I'm glad you asked. If we go here, cloak cannot cards cannot be attacked until they attack.
Which is pretty epic card as well to have on the battlefield.
Yeah.
It's just
So-
laying in wait until you decide you're going to enable it to bring the thunder.
So
with
if you
an attack of 3, which could turn in theoretically with the cards that we just talked about into a potential 4 or 5.
yeah, and so if you think about the state of the board, if you mix a Gnome deck with a Dyno deck, you're doing some heavy damage. Technically, could be on turn 4, could be on turn 3, especially if you have Gnome on the range. You can tap that Gnome on the range for any color to add to that 4 to then bring this out. You're already You're just leveling up your dinos at this point, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
House Gnome is 3 blue, and remember, blue is any gem color,
Yep.
and that's a 3/3. And then when the card enters the battlefield, nothing really happens. So this is literally just a 3/3 person. So we definitely have cards where they're not always doing something when they enter the battlefield, and our humor is to just say nothing happens. Um, Flock of Gnomes.
Yeah, this one's good because this is basically a really good defense card. So the power gem number is 5, 0 attack, but you have 4 defense. So this wall, it's a wall basically, which is you sacrifice any grunt on the battlefield, add the attack value to wall's defense value, which is super helpful too. So again, like. Being strategic and understanding that in order for you to play this particular card, you need that many power gems in order for you to play this, but a really valuable card to have.
Nomi the Clown is purple. It's a 1/4. It's a mock card, and card must be attacked before anything else. And so what mock is these cards have to be attacked before anything else. So you're getting a 1/4, so a heavier gnome. So this would be like someone that has armor on him, and you're putting that out there and basically pissing off the other guy. So if he wanted to attack you, he has to get through Nomi the Clown before he can hit anything else. And if you're buffing Nomi the Clown, it's not necessarily going anywhere. Dancing Daphne.
Same thing. It's another mock card, 4 gem, power gems, purple, 2 attack, and 5 defense. And the card again has to be attacked before anything else on the battlefield. Now we start getting into some really interesting cards.
Yeah, exactly. What do we call this one?
Wave Foodle the Wise.
Yeah, Wave Foodle. I think we were drunk. We're gonna leave these. This one is a 2 green. This is for a 3/1, and you put a 1/1 counter on all gnomes. Awakened, choose one. Pay 5 power gems to destroy any fighter with 3 or less defense.
I think the Awaken is Gnome Reaper.
Okay, yeah.
The Wave Foodle the Rise is just a counter.
Yeah, and then Gnome Reaper is 5, which is blue. This has Awaken. Yep. Which, for those of you following along, the term Awaken typically has power gem cost used to it, meaning that you can play this. You get a 4/3, but if you pay the power gem cost, you can choose from one. You can pay 5 power gems to destroy any fighter with 3 or less defense, or pay 5 defense gems to awaken any fighter in the graveyard with an attack of 3 or less. So now we're getting into the idea of using up your graveyards. Chris, you want to do no mercy?
No mercy. 5 power gem number purple. 4/2 attack defense. Courage. When no mercy is dealt damage, gain 1 health. So the courage terminology is causes player to gain health. So anytime this card is attacked, gain health. And remember, you're gaining health because you have your. And I don't know, did we talk about it? Like at the end of the idea is to beat the top.
So yeah, so this is where we're gonna segue into, because we don't necessarily need to read all the cards, but I wanted to get to this one because this is something that is actually going to be super beneficial. So we've talked about this, and we've kind of given you this idea of what actually is going on with the cards. So we've gone through, and then now we get into one where it says like, okay, gain 1 health. Well, if you remember, we haven't really talked about health and what that looks like. And so what's missing from this? Well, every good faction has someone that's leading it. So we came up with this idea, and these cards will be epic when we make it. They'll be like foil, like pop up videos, like whatever we could do on these cards.
3D.
3D VR, you know. Um,
Yep.
there'll be augmented reality cards maybe. So we are introducing a thing called a battle master, and your battle master is what has your health. And so when you're building a gnome deck, you're building your gnome deck around the goblin gnome, and that has a life of 30. It costs any 2 power gems. Um, so it can be 2 purple, 2 whatever. When you play it and you activate the cost of your 2 power gems, you can awaken a 1/1 grunt. So you can pay any two power gems. It could be a green or a purple. And for that cost in your turn, you can throw out a grunt. The grunts are 1/1. However, if you have 2 green and 2 purple, you can sacrifice 5 of those grunts for 2 4/4 battle goblins.
Which is epic.
Yeah. So you put battle goblins on the field. So really, your health is you're trying to kill the goblin gnome. There's no player health. So that's something that is a little bit different. Like if you think about playing Commander, let's say, right? Commander, you have your player health and you have your commander health. This one, we're just saying you got to get through the battle master. If you get through battle master, that's the end of the round. You win. It's actually very hard to get to the battle master. We've done a theoretical talk through. It does tend to be pretty hard to hit the battle master, which I think is fantastic. And because we're already talking about it, the battle master for the dinos is Dinocron. And I will let you guys understand what we're paying homage to on that. Again, all battle masters are at 30, so there's no like disadvantage. But for 2 attack power gems, so very specific attack, you can deal 1 damage to any fighter, including battle master. So anything on table, you can deal damage to. So if they have Nomis or whatever that's causing you some problems because the guy gets to use whatever battle gem, I would advise you doing that on that card. However, if you're someone that likes to save resources and you have 3 of each gem, so battle and attack and defense gems, you can cast any fighter in your hand at 0 cost.
That's awesome.
So the idea behind that is like maybe you're building a Dino Gnome deck. You would have to pick which battle master you're doing, and you can only pick 1 battle master, but it can be of any faction in your hand. So you could build a Dino Gnome deck around Goblin Gnome or around Dinocron. It's your choice. If you do unicorns and dinos or whatever, you can build it around that. If you add 3 of them, you can pick any one of the 3. So it's really about you figuring out your end game, which theoretically the end game revolves around the battle master's abilities. Very, very, a lot of time thought out in these battle masters. I think we spend the majority of our time figuring out the battle masters.
Yeah. Yep. It took us a long time to come up with the cards, the names, the attack and defense capability, and you know, as we continue to walk through this over the next several episodes, we may want to change things. Like, we're just showing you the very preliminary early stages of our initial ideas. Some of it we're just trying to refresh our memory, and we thought rather than going and like researching, like, let's do it live. Yeah. Like, holy shit, I remember that, or that's cool, or oh, we need to change that name. What the hell did we say that? But I think there's some elements of it, just like refreshing my memory, that I think we need to like test out a little bit more. And then other things are just like badass. Like I want to see dinos versus gnomes. Like, I want to see that being played. like a super fast deck versus super like defensive with high attack power, I think would be a fucking interesting game to see, to witness as a first ever like battle on the field. What are the
Yeah.
other battle masters?
We actually didn't come up with those. So we're actually going to come.
We didn't, huh? So
No,
we
so
have
we're
Dinocron and
Goblin Gnome,
Goblin Gnome.
and which is part of where we're going to get in. So the first two episodes are really us just talking through what we've done to come up with dinos and gnomes, and then the next episodes we're really going to get into actually really developing the cards for the unicorn deck, and then also for the zombie deck. I think that's the goal. I will say that there is a card in the gnome deck, because we're in our next episode we'll go over dinos. But I want to leave some cards to, like, surprise. But there is one called Lucius G Smack, and he is 8. He is 8 purple. He's a 7/3, so 7 attack, 3 defense. But if he's dealt damage, you swap the attack and defense.
That's awesome.
So then he becomes a 3/7, and hopefully you killed him. And it is fair trade. So if you hit me for 7, my card will hit your card for 3 in that sense, right? So you really have to plan that out. So the rules of engagement still apply like you would in any trading card game. Again, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel per se, but there is a lot there. But we realize that terminology, we're going to be coming up with more terms during these podcasts. But I think that's about good for right now. I think we've been talking people's ear off for like 52 minutes.
We have, but I think this is exciting to walk you through this. The first of at least 6, if not more, of bringing this to life. But wanted to give you a general idea of where we're at. I think in the next episode, as Jason shared, dive a little bit into the dinosaur deck, and then we'll start to talk a little bit about things that we need to change and some of the creative ideas. I think we can take this to the next level, including card layout and design, some of the stuff that we really didn't get too much into as we moved on to other projects. But I'm excited to pick this back up and talk live with all of you, and kind of do the work on air as best as we can. And that's what we wanted to do it. So we promise you the future episodes will be more of like less about recapping and more about like getting into the creative stuff and bouncing ideas back and forth. And we're hoping as you listen or view along, you could provide some insight and ideas as well, and make the game better than we're hoping it is.
Yeah, and I would say like we're actively kind of checking comments, everything else, because we really want people to get involved. This is a game that once we get it hashed out and figured out is something that we ideally would love to take to Kickstarter. See what happens from there. If not, fund it on our own and see how far we can get on that. But I think it'll be good, man. I'm excited. It's fun rehashing this because it's just sparking that passion in me again, where it's like this is awesome. Like, and we'll in between some episodes we'll get into like extremely mad popsicles and current state of that, which is exciting. Also, we'll talk some about unicorns and zombies, current state of that, where we're at on there, just to kind of break it up because multiple episodes of the same thing gets to be kind of boring. We want you guys to kind of have that different aspect. So, I think next week we will come back at you with more of Mythic Mayhem and the Dyno Deck. So we will see you. Chris, do you want to say bye?
Adios.
Oh, that's good
Adios,
Spanish.
muchachos.